Well, welcome back to Jay and Dave's Sports Bar another week. And it seemed like we were kind of sailing off into a quiet off season, but it actually kind of has been I would say a little bit of a busy last week or so. The Boise State football team making a couple of hires. We have the new Mountain West media rights deal that's out. We're going to focus on those two things specifically for today's edition of the podcast. But I don't want to say like the worst kept secret, but I mean, I feel like we all kind of knew what direction that Boise State was going to go for these specific two hirings. I'm not even going to lie. Running back's a little more of a wild card for me. But the wide receiver position and the offensive coordinator position kind of came together like we thought, Dave.
It pretty much went exactly like we thought. I think we even mentioned at the end of last week's podcast, I quickly tried to call my shot, and I said Matt Miller. That was correct. That Kiesau was either going to be a co-OC, remain that way, or become the OC. So no one's too surprised by that. It is funny that, it's talking about Boise State and these things, these hires, some people are excited for them and stuff, but, they're not, I don't want to say they're not wow hires.
Yeah.
Like getting Matt Miller and stuff, that's exciting for people, but it's not like they went out of their tree, right? And that's what's so funny covering Boise State is like they just kind of reload.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a rebuild. And we look across the sports landscape and there's Odell Beckham giving money to players and slapping security guards, the same security guards who wanted to arrest players for smoking cigars. There's the baseball scandal. But Boise State is just like, hey, it's new, but y'all guys kind of saw this coming.
Yeah. Gosh, I could talk at nauseum about those other two topics.
I
mean, on one hand, why does Odell Beckham put himself in that situation? And I actually am more kind of talking about the handing out money. He knows it's illegal. Whether it's right or wrong, whether student athletes should be paid or not, that has nothing to do with this conversation right now. At that point in time, these kids just won a national championship, and he's kind of, in a way, stealing that moment from them because he's putting them in this awkward situation. And whatever, but that's not where we're going today. We're not talking about baseball either because I could also talk about that forever.
We can talk about a former player who didn't get paid, and then when he got a job at Boise State the first time around, didn't get paid very much at all because he was quality control.
Yeah.
Now he's wide receivers coach, Matt Miller.
But now he's wide receivers coach. So the bigger news, I guess, is Matt Miller coming home. He's leaving home. The tweet that they put out says Matt's coming home. Now Matt's leaving home. Matt's a Montana boy.
I wonder if Montana State said coming home.
Yeah. And he's Montana through and through, by the way. But he's coming back to his alma mater, and he gets the chance to now coach the position that he played here at Boise State. And as you said, I don't know if anybody, the depths of it, I don't know if it's super intriguing right now, Dave, but just the surface news that Matt Miller's coming back, I think it does have people excited. I mean, that guy, 244 career catches, that record still stands. He only played 5 games his senior season, and he still holds that mark. So, I mean, he missed over half a season, and he's still the career receptions holder at Boise State. But more than anything, I mean, he's one of those guys that everybody basically views him the exact same way. Kind of a dry personality. Doesn't mean he can't be funny.
Correct.
Kind of a dry personality, though, just like his dad, Scott. And one of the tougher football players that we've probably covered as Boise State media members.
Yep. And that's, again, it's so trite to say it, but the blue-collar thing, but you think about dude from Montana, dude that kind of had, he was going to play as a true freshman. And then he tore his Achilles. I want to say that was the injury. I remember it happening at practice, which is weird because that's when we used to be able to watch all of practice.
Yeah.
But I remember when it happened. It was at East Junior High. It was if you're facing the field, it's the back left corner. I just remember seeing it. And that, he came back from that, and he was always kind of, for wide receivers, you always think about toughness, but that was always kind of something that I thought definitely defined him. And I think that will fit well at Boise State. When we talked to Eric Kiesau yesterday, he did talk about what's paramount here is finding the right fit, whether it's in recruiting or coaching. Well, if you got a guy like a Miller who kind of exemplified Boise State, was, got his foot in the door coaching here and is coming back after, spreading his wings elsewhere, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
It does. It's not necessarily it's not like, oh my God, they got Kellen or whatever.
No,
but it's...
They got a guy with some really good college experience, and he's only 28 years old.
Yep.
I mean, Matt really did take the fast track to becoming an OC at a school that was one of the best FCS programs in the country this last year. And the only reason they didn't make it to the championship game is probably because they ran into North Dakota State, who, well, nobody is beating these days.
Correct. What's their win streak at now?
They're 16-0 this year. I think they went 15-1 last year. I don't know when they lost last year.
Yeah.
But they're incredible.
Yeah.
Maybe they went 15-0 last year.
I thought they did.
No, they haven't lost since 2017.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. And so I know, so he got promoted midway through the 18 season to OC. You make that shift mid-season. That's not usually a good thing, but if you look at the numbers, I think they averaged about 80 yards a game more once he went in that year. So last year was only his first full season as the OC. Number 8 in the country in rushing in the FCS. 27th in scoring. They weren't a pass-heavy team. They had Rovig, the kid from Mountain View.
From Mountain View, right down the road.
At the quarterback, but he was efficient. I think as a team, they had 20 touchdowns to 5 picks. So it was very efficient. And, a guy that was, during last season, he was 28 still.
Yeah.
Calling plays, and, he was the recruiting coordinator up until he got promoted to OC. So he's had some roles there, and, that was their best season in 35 years. 1984, they won national championship.
Don't you kind of wish, and I swear I'm not even being disrespectful right now, I just want to be a fly on the wall and Matt Miller turns on the charm and tries, and goes and puts his best foot forward recruiting. And again, I'm totally kind of,
I know what you mean.
I'm trying to be lighthearted about this, but just because, he was such just like, just kind of like a nuts and bolts, tough player, roll up your sleeves. And, I remember him limping off the field at Air Force, and nobody wants to remember that game for a number of reasons. But him limping off the field at Air Force, and you could just tell, like, the needle was at E. Yeah. He could not, the tank was empty.
Yeah.
He's truly one of those guys that when we reflect on his career, you have the cliche, leave it all out there on the field. Matt Miller was one of those guys who left every ounce of himself on that field.
It's interesting you mention that because I saw, I think it was our buddy Drew Roberts had tweeted out a photo of Miller getting the Hawaii Bowl MVP in 2013.
I got a good giggle
and
out
he
of
looked pretty pissed off. I remember.
Yeah, 206 yards in a losing effort was named the offensive MVP.
And so I was, I covered that game and, but I remember vividly afterward, we get on the press conference, and he got up around the table and went and just started just BSing with me. And players don't usually do that. They just don't. And he's a guy who's coming back. Sometimes if a guy's like a senior or something, they kind of, it's the moment, after the game, after the Vegas Bowl, I saw David Moa's brother and talked to them and stuff. But Miller went right up to me right after the game, right after that press conference, and was just kind of BSing a little bit. And he seemed, to be frank, relieved that game was over.
Well, you hear a lot of people talk about that game. It was just so awkward. Not a lot of guys were focused. And let's face it, Matt Miller probably was one of the guys that was 100% invested in. Who knows, maybe a little frustrated that some other guys weren't.
And they had, by then they had hired Brian Harsin. But he just had this confidence. I just really remember him just being like, this is not going to happen next year. I remember telling me that. He goes, this is not going to happen next year. Okay. That was some confidence. Yeah. And he always was a guy who was confident, but never would say something like that usually. And so I was like, whoa, guess what? Even though he got hurt, they won the Fiesta Bowl that year. So he's always impressed me, and I did a story on them back in the spring on that Montana State staff. Glad I did, because they ended up having a hell of a year. But talked to him for that and stuff, and just remember Choate telling me, he goes, when Miller was 18, he was 28.
Yeah.
Just that there was a level of maturity and stuff you see in guys like, I have to conjure his name, but guys like Kellen and those sorts of guys that just always have that about them from day one. And I think that really,
I even think of other guys like I don't know why one name that always stands out to me, but somebody that, okay, I'll go with a name that maybe people wouldn't think of because he didn't have the most production in the world, but always took care of business.
Dallas Burrows.
Watched out for others on his team. No. Like a Bo Martin or somebody.
Okay, yeah,
just
that's
super.
That's a good one.
When you think about Bronco football, Matt Miller, Bo Martin, they kind of embody. I'd even throw David Moe in there. Just persevered through everything and still finished his career on a relative high note. It's guys like that you kind of think of.
Khalil Shakir now.
Oh, he's becoming one.
Just a guy that.
But now you're back to the production identifying it too. Like you don't necessarily need like to say, oh, he worked hard and stuff like that. Like he's very much the total package.
Just the maturity and the confidence and that stuff. So I mean, I think the Miller hire is going to be a good one, even though. Yeah, I mean, Montana State's offense it's not like he's coming from a place that was running the air raid. Yeah. Where you just say, oh, look at those numbers. But in terms of like coaching ability, that kind of stands out. Like, he obviously has some of that. And he's a guy who has coordinator experience now. And he's actually, I'm not saying he's taking a demotion, but he has a little bit less say in the offense now. But he has that experience. Do you want that, or do you want a guy who's maybe somewhere else that was like an inside receivers coach?
No, give me this any day. Give me the young up and comer. I mean, my alma mater, Washington State, just hired a coach, and there are some names thrown around there like Steve Sarkisian and Jim Mora, and man, I actually talked to Jim Mora earlier this year about Hank Bachmeier, and he was fantastic talking about Hank. But no offense to those guys, I'd rather have somebody that is on the way up versus. I don't know.
You want to say retread?
Retread's such a harsh word, but it's true. It is what it is. And so they went with Nick Rolovich, our boy. Happy about that one. Give me somebody that's on the way up, like a Matt Miller in this situation. And I know that does kind of look weird. Like, you do have to kind of stop for a second and think, like, is this a move forward for him? He goes from overseeing an offense now being a part of an offense. I mean, like, for example, when Zach Hill came here, he went from being an OC at Eastern to being the OC at Boise State. In this specific case, so, I mean, Matt's so young that I absolutely think that this is a step up in his career, and he's putting himself in a very good position to get, that type of title later on in his life.
I would agree. And, with Kiesau, what stood out to me about Kiesau, and always has, since he got hired, and I remember we talked to him in the weight room right when he got hired, and he basically said one of the appeals of Boise State was that he thought Brian Harsin was going to be around here for quite a while.
It's been right about that so far.
And when you think about it, between 2010 and 2016, Kiesau was at 6 different schools. He got to a point in his life where he was like, I don't want to be bouncing around anymore.
And he's got family, he's got kids, one of them just graduated college. One of them is going into high school.
To Timberline.
Timberline. And he shared that with us too. Stoked that he really wants his kid to go to high school for all 4 years.
Yeah, right.
At the same place. And so, I mean, when he says that he's not looking to leave, I mean, like, it's stuff like that really makes you think, like, wow, like, it would really take something to get him out of here.
It would. And that was, to be frank, I thought that was pretty refreshing. I mean, I think
it's the first OC that they've hired where it's not like, well, how long is he going to be here? You know what I mean?
And that was
the clock. I can hear the clock ticking.
And that's what prompted it. The question was that, hey, I don't know, maybe you asked it about like, hey, the OCs that have
it was kind of a tricky question because I was, I wasn't saying that he had a foot out the door or anything like that, but I mean, like, you look at it for what it is, and I mean, this is not
the potential for advancement.
This is a very good position. I mean, Mike Sanford had this job. He left for Notre Dame. He's now the OC at Minnesota. A couple of stops in between. Eli Drinkowitz went from NC State to the head coach at App State. Now he's the head coach at Missouri. He was the OC here in 2015.
Right.
I mean, like,
for 1 year.
Yeah, like that. Talk about a rise. Yeah. And then Zach Hill. I mean, like, only time will tell how high he can climb, but probably almost tripled his salary, probably at least doubled his salary to go down there, and now he's coaching next to Herm Edwards at a Pac-12 school. I mean, this usually is a very good springboard of opportunity, that offensive coordinator position at Boise State.
And the way he answered it wasn't I don't think he answered it the way I thought he would have.
He didn't.
Because, you kind of think a coach might just be like, it's great, and stuff like that, but I'm focused on this right now. But
he gave us a little depth.
Kiesau just goes, those were young guys probably looking to move up in their careers. Yeah. I'm not. Or something similar
Something similar to that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was sort of refreshing to hear that. And I know some people are going to be cynical about it and be like, well, Mike Stanford said this was his dream job. Marcel Yates said that. Or, you know what I mean? And guys have said that. I get it. But again, I think they were in different positions than Kiesau is.
Yeah.
And so, so when he answered it that way, it was really kind of, I thought it was pretty enlightening. Just to be like, hey, that's where he's at.
Well,
I wouldn't be stunned if Miller keeps rising up. If like eventually Kiesau is like, all right, he's going to be the coach.
He's ready to go.
Something. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be stunned just because.
And I think there are coaches out there. I think like a guy like Chris Peterson is one of them. In all honesty,
that might be the running backs coach. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I do think there's coaches out there that realize that other guys are ready for an opportunity, and like I don't know if he's ever like openly said that this was part of the reason why Peterson decided to leave Washington, but the fact that Jimmy Lake was so ready for this opportunity, like I think that Chris Peterson's that type of guy where he looks over his shoulder and says, you know what, I'm not loving it as much as I used to. This guy's clearly ready. It's time for me to pass the hat. Who's to say that might not happen a few years from now if Matt Miller seems ready to be the OC here. I mean, we're really getting ahead of ourselves.
Right.
But maybe at that point in time, even Eric's like, you know what, good point, and I have this opportunity. I'll go chase that.
Right.
Like, I don't know. We're really getting ahead of ourselves trying to, hypothesize or speculate about that stuff. But
and one thing I have always appreciated about Kiesau, because he has been around, he's not afraid to actually like say something.
Dude, he's not. And this is well before this year, well before having OC next to his title.
Just like last year during fall camp, he said on paper this is one of the best receiving corps he's ever had. He said he's had some great like number one type guys. Yeah, Keenan Allen, Ross, guys like that. Frank, Scotty McKnight at CU, right?
Who's that?
Come on now, that's my guy. He's a lot of times had a really good number one wide receiver. Maybe not the depth he's ever had. And he was frank about that. And he said, on paper, and he goes, they have to go out and prove it. Yeah. They probably came close to it this year, I think.
I definitely think that room did.
And who knows if they had the same quarterback, how much that would have changed it. But point being is that he's done that sort of thing before, and just giving a little bit of insight that, guess what? It doesn't hurt when you do that.
This is a great point, Dave, because even when we were sitting in our coaches meetings talking with these guys one-on-one, and you're asking them about, John Hightower, and he's saying, in terms of, I've coached Keenan Allen, I've coached John Ross, he was laying out some big hitters, Deshaun Jackson, and he's like, when it comes to speed, when it comes to ability, like, man, John Hightower's in that group. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like that looks great on TV, that looks great on print, that looks great on the internet, and that looks great on Twitter. Wherever you want to put that quote, that looks awesome. Sometimes that's not offered to us, though, as you were just kind of saying.
No, it's not.
And the fact that he did, and the fact that John Hightower clearly backed it the frick up, it was just kind of awesome, because I think everybody benefits in that situation.
And also, too, you had a wouldn't say you stole it from me, because you would have stolen it from my brain. Unless you have the Inception thing, right?
Yep, I do. Well, you took one from me yesterday. We'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, you did.
Oh.
Yeah, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, anyway. Well, because likewise. But like you even mentioned, the year he spent in Alabama. He was very cool about it and open about it, and talked about what it meant to him, and he gave us some insight, and was like, hey, here's the story behind that.
Yep.
Most guys don't do that. And guess what? There's no harm in it. And it's better for everybody. And I think it makes him more likable. It makes our product better. And so that's selfishly a reason why I'm excited that he's going to be the OC. And because he was also, like, even stuff that's off the record, like, he was the OC at my alma mater for 2 years. And they weren't great. Yeah. And they had some players who were very highly touted who did not deliver. And he told me exactly why they didn't. And I'm like, those sorts of things. Yeah. Just giving you a better knowledge.
You actually led me to the question that I feel that you stole from me. And that is just kind of getting into the previous times that he was an offensive coordinator. And, I was kind of excited because, you kind of start to look at this stuff. Okay, how did he do as an offensive coordinator in his previous stops? And you immediately gravitate to his last season at Washington, where Bishop Sankey rushed for 1,870 yards. Keith Price had the second highest quarterback efficiency rating in that league. They put up 499 yards of total offense per game. That ranked second in the league.
They hammered Boise State in the opener.
They hammered Boise State in the opener. They scored 37 some odd points per game. I mean, it looked beautiful on paper. Yeah. And you're kind of thinking like, wow, this is what they're getting into. Now, if you do dive a little further into some of the other years, they were not as fruitful for him. But you really have to look at the situations. I mean, we're talking about not just Colorado under Dan Hawkins. We're talking about the waning years of the Dan Hawkins tenure, which, I mean, the seat was was on fire to begin with when Kiesau took over that position. He was the interim OC at Kansas
for a couple games.
Do we really even need to talk about that? I mean, like, that's not an ideal situation, or that's not a situation where you're going to be set up for a bunch of success. And then Fresno State, he was a part of the final year of the Tim DeRuyter era, which, again, that ship was sinking and sinking fast.
Yes, it was.
This, you could really argue, outside of his last season at Washington, where he had some good talent, this is easily the best situation with easily the highest ceiling and easily the highest floor, for that matter, that he's ever had to work with at offensive coordinator. And he even kind of alluded to that yesterday.
He did. And he was great answering my question about it. Because if you do look at those numbers, whenever he's been the OC/quarterbacks coach, those numbers have all been bad. They just have. That year at Washington, they took the quarterbacks off his plate. Marquise Tuiasosopo came in. Marcus Tuiasosopo, sorry, not Marquise. And they had a hell of a year. So that is a remaining question mark, in my opinion. Is he? But here, is he in a better situation because he's been around a couple of years and stuff like that? Yes, I think he'll do a fine job. Just the history is not great, but he had a great point. As he said, at those other places you felt like you had to build something, you had to do something new. Here, there's already foundation, so you can focus on the other things, and I think that will benefit him. And I think that even though he hasn't coached quarterbacks a lot in his career, he has a little bit. Basically
he played quarterback.
Basically 5 years he's coached it in his 20 years as a coach. So that's not a lot, but and it's with mixed success at best. But I think in terms of the situation he's in, the intelligence he has, the experience he has, I think it'll be a good fit. And just just because I mentioned that stuff doesn't mean I think he's going to do a bad job. It's just something that every time someone gets a new hire, they just say, "Oh, home run," or "Oh, it's terrible." It's just like, I think it's a very good one. Just that part remains to be seen. If he does well, then you're like, well, the machine keeps on rolling.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even gonna lie either. Like, the fact that Brian Harsin is there, and he is and always will be very involved in the offense. I mean, that also gives a little bit of room for air for somebody just stepping into those shoes for the first time, or for the first time in a little while.
And I think when people want, like, they want some outside hire, some big one. This is, I won't say Brian Harsin's offense. A lot of it is.
But it is.
It is. Right.
You can say that, I think. I mean, it's his team, it's his program, it's his offense. Heck, it's his defense. I think you're going a little bit further with it being his offense.
Right.
But, yeah, totally.
Yeah, so it's like when Zach came here, like, they probably instituted some stuff from Eastern Washington.
I would assume.
But it's not like he came and brought Eastern Washington's offense
here. And that's not what you're going to get out of this either. It's going to look pretty darn similar.
So I think with these two hires, what it said, and kind of what I wrote about Miller today, is familiarity is vital to Brian Harsin. That maybe whoever the running backs coach is might not have experience at Boise State.
Yeah, I'm going to go out. I mean, and I really don't know about this one. I mean, I felt like the wide receivers coach and the offensive coordinator were pretty easy to peg. The running backs coach is just a little bit different. But if you do look at some of his past hires, ever since he first got here, it hasn't been just Boise State hire after Boise State hire.
It hasn't. No.
He's found a way to diversify his coaching staff and the coaching skill set overall by reaching out and grabbing a guy like a Zach Alley or something like that, Jeff Schmedding. I mean, those are guys that didn't have previous ties to Boise State. So Kiesau, exactly. I just kind of wonder. I just kind of wonder because of the last two. One was a promotion, the other one was a former Bronco. I kind of wonder if it's going to be somebody that is a little more unpredictable than the previous two.
Not as obvious.
I
think that's fair.
Yeah,
it's very fair. I think that, and then I think they would do well if they hired someone who's a really good recruiter, because that's what Lee Marks was. And also, I did the math today. Not really math, that's counted. After Marks left, the offensive staff, as it sat, had no former Boise State players. Miller coming in makes it
offensive staff. Right? Yes,
19 years in a row, they'll have had at least one former Boise State player on the offensive staff.
And the streak continues.
Right, and they talk about culture and all that stuff, and I think that's part of why Miller makes sense, and why I think why it's a fit and all that stuff.
I think you got to find that balance because early on there was a lot of former Broncos.
Yeah, it was right, and I think some people are, I don't want to say conditioned. I mean, there are some fans who think they've done that too much. And then there are some that say, why don't they just always go to that well?
And the reality of it is, find somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to be just happy
so if you're
and
gonna
just
hire
fine.
2 new coaches, one that was here, one hasn't been.
Before we move on, I do want to say this though. When it comes to Matt Miller, you want to talk about a position coach in a great spot. He's inheriting a wealth of talent at that position. I mean, I'm not dismissing that. Or I'm not saying that John Hightower is just going to be replaceable. But if you kind of look at some of their interactions between themselves and how they've done it in practice, and how even one catch would kind of show you a glimpse of the future, Steph Cobbs is a guy that's lightning in a bottle as well. So
that was my prediction.
If you need some speed to replace John Hightower, there's certainly somebody left in the cupboard that you can pull out of that thing and hopefully be okay. And then you have Khalil Shakir, C.T. Thomas. I can't believe it, but Octavius Evans is going to be a senior next year.
Yeah.
And I'm over the fact that guy needs 40 catches, 50 catches a year, because if you actually do want to, pay attention to some of the stuff he does in the blocking game, not only on offense too, special teams. That guy wrecks fools.
Yeah.
And so he's got some talent though in that room without a doubt.
And Shea Whiting was the scout team player of the year.
Very good point.
So I mean, Kiesau leaves that in a very good place.
Kiesau, I mean, you want to talk about leaving something better than you found it. Whew.
And they signed one in December in Latrell Caples from Lancaster, which is where CT's from. Chance Looper, that guy that was committed and didn't sign today, announced he's
interesting timing on that one.
Decommitting.
Yeah.
I don't know, because his dad got hired at Missouri, and I think a lot of people assume he's going to go to Missouri.
Yeah.
But
he's also retweeting like offers from Illinois State or something.
Yeah, but TCU he was at, but hadn't offered him. So it's a weird recruitment.
Yeah.
And there's a reason now why I tried to reach him for a story in December, and he never responded to me.
Yeah, that could be one of those things. I mean, I don't know if this quite relates, but if you are an employee of the school, then your family goes there for free, essentially, right? Or some huge discount.
Big discount,
big
like
discount.
with the Max Rice thing.
And that's what I was going to say, is that maybe he doesn't need a scholarship offer to go to Missouri.
Could be.
And that works out numbers for them.
And that was going to be the thing with Cody Hawkins. If he was going to come to Boise State, he was going to walk on.
Yeah, because it barely costs them anything, and they basically get a scholarship player.
Yep.
Like a Max Rice for Leon Rice.
And Eric Kiesau coached Cody Hawkins at CU. How's that?
There you go.
Whoa.
Really full circle.
So the last topic before we go, the reason I have to cut this a little short is partially because of that, because of the TV deal. But the TV deal that came out last week, we didn't get to talk about it.
Excuse me.
But what are your thoughts? Because I had a lot, and I probably did like 4 different drafts of my story when I wrote it.
Yeah.
And then I did a follow-up about it. It's what drives everything. It really does.
I think
so it's interesting.
The knee-jerk reaction is pretty obvious for everybody, and that's, wait a minute, no more ESPN?
Right.
And I get that. There's a concern there. I really do. Trying, as the days pass and you try to kind of, look at this from different angles maybe. One thing I will say about Commissioner Thompson, he at times can be a little stubborn, as we've seen. Yeah. But he is a pretty creative man. I will say that. He usually is somewhat of a trendsetter. And from conference realignment that he sparked, conference realignment. Mountain West was the first conference to have a television network. Didn't necessarily work out, but now you have bigger conferences that have more money, the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big Ten now.
Big Ten, 14.
They all have their own networks. I mean,
ACC's getting it.
He's been a very innovative man as the commissioner of the league. So trying to kind of look at some of the past things he's done that has led to some success, it makes me have a moment of pause to see how this really might work out. And no ratings for FS1 and Fox don't match some of ESPN's numbers.
Correct. But
from my understanding, FS1 and Fox's numbers are increasing.
Yeah.
And so if Boise State can be a part of that, get in, kind of at the ground floor and help them build this thing, then, maybe he said a bunch of interesting little things, and we're going to probably get to a couple of them. But one of the things that he's already, Commissioner Thompson already said something about it's going to position them really well for the next television deal. We're just announcing this television deal, and you're already saying that we're positioning ourselves for the next one. So I think it's a calculated risk. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it has a high upside, especially with, a guarantee from CBS to put some of their games on over the air.
Yes. Which that's big. You want to talk about exposure. You don't need how many times? Well, I guess maybe not for you, Dave, but every week prior to game day, we get calls about what channel the Broncos are on. And ESPNU. Well, I don't get ESPNU with my cable package. If they ever land on CBS or Fox, that's huge for Boise State, because you just turn on the TV, you got bunny ears, you're watching the Broncos.
Yeah, and you find those numbers, and those numbers are always
very
huge,
very good.
There's no guarantee they're going to be on Fox, but
no,
it is said there's a minimum of 7 on Fox or FS1.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, that has to be talking about Boise State. Not all 7, no.
But Boise State has 7 home games.
But Boise State has 7 home games, and I'm just saying, you're not putting San Jose State and Hawaii on. You're finding the biggest, best brand you have, and whatever anybody wants to argue right now, it's still Boise State in the Mountain West. It is still the nationally known brand in the league.
So if you do just simple math, you just say, you don't know exactly what Hawaii's cut is.
Yeah,
they're figuring that out. You don't know exactly how much the Mountain West is getting. Just basic math. Each team probably is going to triple their number that they were getting. Boise State's going to double. Some close enough, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Very close to triple, double. That helps Boise State. It needs it. I don't know what they've ticketed it for use yet. They have capital projects they want to do. I'm sure they want to keep their coaches happy. But what was interesting to me is changing from ESPN is big, but also the fact that their deal where they get more than everybody else is going away. And there is a shroud of secrecy about how and why this happened, but we obviously knew that the rest of the Mountain West was not pleased. Were they able to supersede Boise State some way? Perhaps. No one's talking about it. I've tried. And that part's interesting to me, because
I think that those words caught Boise State a little off guard by the commish.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was anything that was written anywhere, definitive anywhere.
Yeah. No, I don't think no. I think probably whenever they found out, they probably weren't psyched. And so you heard Apsey's comments on the radio. He basically deferred to the commissioner, and the commissioner didn't really answer the question.
Yeah.
So I wrote about it, and I genuinely think it's there a little bit. There's a little bit of a fraying between them and the conference. I do.
I'm just going out here, and I could be completely wrong, but again, we sit at our desks and we try to think about questions to ask or angles to approach this from, or what is going on and why is this happening. And one thing, and this might come off as a little harsh, but I think that when the Mountain West got Boise State, they let Boise State have the special deal because the Broncos were earning it.
Yeah, a hot commodity.
They were going to New Year's Six bowl games, and they were not just bringing more exposure to the league, but legit more money.
Yes.
And so it is what it is. They went 12-1 this year after winning the Mountain West Conference Championship game. Should they have been in a New Year's Six game or not? They weren't. So it is what it is. They put themselves in a great position to get there, but they weren't. So it is a little unfair to say this, but if you don't get into those games, why should you be getting a different deal than the rest of the league?
Yes, I agree with you. Yes.
So I think it's a bit of a strong play on both, where it's you notice that the commissioner also said the word arguably in that comment. Arguably, the last time we negotiate the deal separately.
But then when I followed it up, he said it was the last one.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that I think
no one corrected me.
Yeah, I know. No, good point, Dave. That's fine. I think that there might be a little bit of a window where it's once again, it's show it to me.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
If we're in 6 years and
Boise State goes to 2.
Right. If we're here in 5 years and Boise State does make 2 of those games and there's no other conference for them to land.
Yeah.
Maybe they readdress. Maybe they re-examine it. I'll give you that. I do agree with that. But if that doesn't happen, here's the thing. I know, and the fans are going to say it, and I agree with them that Boise State does drive, the most viewers in that conference, the most attention, all that stuff. And that was a condition, like you said. But there still can be a way where that exists without you getting extra money and pissing off the rest of the conference. Yeah. Maybe there's a way that they're not going to extra money, but maybe they get more of the better TV slots. Whatever. There still can be a way for that to happen, and maybe they don't get the extra money. And maybe the conference can still live with that. And you can still say, yes, that team drives it. I don't think they're at the point at this moment where they can just sit there and beat their chest and be like, well, if you're not going to do it, we're leaving. Yet. Yeah. If the American says, hey, we're going to expand west. Yeah, Boise State's going to listen. You better believe it.
I think that, last time that this was negotiated, that things weren't as stable. It did seem like the playing field was a little more fluid, and teams trying to get into other conferences. To where this year, man, there was no rumors of anything. No. And so now you almost, over the next 5-6 years, if you're Boise State, you almost have to create this buzz to where that I don't know. I mean that you might leave, or that you're bringing more money to the conference. You just have to maybe re-show them why you're special. It's just interesting, man. Like, you wonder if you want to really start going back and forth. Like, you said maybe a little bit of friction between the conference. Okay, we'll go with that then. Maybe this also dated back to even the New Year's Six Bowl thing. Like, why the Mountain West isn't standing on a soapbox saying take Boise State.
And that's what I mentioned in my story. Was that like it probably existed before that a little bit, because Boise State, it's basically like saying, like, if you're the sports director and you get paid whatever, and then it's like, actually you can't be that anymore. You can still work here. Yeah, and you wouldn't be psyched about it.
You wouldn't be psyched about it,
right? And so and I think that's where Boise State is. But I think that you make good points about their place in all this. That they want to call the shots. They want to get the extra stuff because it was given to them. But also, it's like, as good as your team has been, you haven't necessarily done those things.
I also think that upon the last negotiations, the league, even the teams around the league were like, okay, yeah, we do need a Boise State. We just lost TCU. BYU's not back in the picture. Like, we need them. But now that they've been competing with Boise State for a little while, I think they're looking around the conference and being like, well, how the hell are we supposed to catch these guys if they're getting more than us?
Also fair.
And so I think that, maybe a little familiarity has kind of led to all this too. Is that
contempt? Familiarity breeds contempt, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the independence idea, I know people can throw that out, and like, you're isolated enough, and you do have a brand and stuff. That is a tough road.
I mean, it's so funny because right now it's just like, oh yeah, BYU independent, right? But it's like, but we can do it.
Look at those dweebs, but us. But it's like, but what's your ceiling?
Yeah. Unless
you're Notre Dame, and like people are like, well, yeah, Boise State could schedule like Mountain West teams and Pac-12 teams, whatever. Well, okay. Yeah. Is that still going to be enough to get them at that Notre Dame level? No, it's not.
I don't think it will. But I'll say this: I thought Rocky Long, of all people, brought up a great point when he's like, well, if you want BYU to be in the league, then teams in the league need to stop scheduling them. Because if BYU didn't have Mountain West teams to lean on, they'd really be in trouble.
Right. It's true.
So maybe that, if Boise State wanted to go that route, then all of a sudden you have teams in the Mountain West. Maybe the commissioner's like, nah, nobody can play Boise State. Right. And who are you playing?
Right. And do you want that schedule where, hey, no offense, Boise State fans, but
it'd be fun for a couple of years.
Other than that Florida State game,
yeah,
didn't have a great run against Power Fives.
Yeah.
And if you want that schedule, if you want an independent schedule like BYU had, where in September they stack it with those teams, if you don't run that gauntlet, you're toast.
Yeah.
Your peak is the bowl games you already hate.
Yeah. And even like after they did kind of have a slow start, like BYU actually did finish the season okay.
Yeah.
But I still think the national perception of them is that they weren't good.
No.
Because they didn't start good. No. And then just like whatever they do the rest of the way, it's like, beat top 10 or whatever, 14th ranked Boise State, whatever the heck they were at the time. But it's like, oh yeah, but they also lost to
Toledo.
Toledo.
USF.
Yeah, it was on the road.
They beat Tennessee and USC.
I think they beat Tennessee at like the last second,
and
right?
USC.
And USC, but they lost to Washington. It just waters it down. You just don't care.
It's a digression, but I've seen people throw that.
I mean,
out.
this is a program where too, if it's like, oh, we're 10-2 in November, it's an average season.
Yeah. It's really changed in the last like 2 months. I've seen so many fans who are just like, we need out of the Mountain West. We need out of the Mountain West. And I'm like, I was like, were you saying that in October, November? Like, honestly, maybe somewhere. But really, it was like, as soon as like, it was clear the AAC was getting that spot, and everyone's like, that, they need out. Mm-hmm. Okay. If that's what it took, sure.
Yeah.
But who knows, I guarantee you, because every year Boise State's at least in the conversation.
Yep.
And then if you look around the AAC, that was a better league.
Mm-hmm.
It's just true.
From top to bottom.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Just a better league.
Yeah. I wonder, like, the top couple of teams, like Boise State, Air Force, how they would contend against some of the top teams in the AAC.
Well, I think they'd fare pretty well.
Yeah.
I just think the AAC is just deeper.
Yeah. I guess we saw Air Force Navy, and Navy did win that game.
Yeah.
But,
sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I know that it's hard to say this, but, man, it's just tough to predict. It's tough to project. I think that you just have to be a little patient to see how this does work out. I mean, like, if they're not landing on I'll say this: most of their games better be on FS1, Fox, and/or CBS. And if they're not, then there's a reason to hit the panic button.
Short term, good deal.
Yeah.
Riskier the longer you go.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
That it gets them more money.
I mean, what is FS2?
FS2. What about it? They have Australian rules football games sometimes.
Okay. But like in terms of,
I have that number in my last story. Like I think they have. Like FS1 was in 83 million homes at the last count, which was about a year ago.
Okay.
And FS2 is at about 53.
Oh, that's actually higher than I would have thought.
Yeah.
I'm not high, but higher than I would have thought.
Because like ESPN and ESPN2 almost have the exact same numbers.
Yes, exactly. That's
very,
what, like,
very comparable to FS1.
There used to be a day where it was like, oh, an ESPN2 over ESPN.
Right. Oh, it's on the deuce.
ESPN2 and ESPN are the same thing now.
Yep,
like in terms of college football game, it's the same thing.
Though only one ESPN2 game got more than 1 million viewers last year. All year. Boise State Marshall.
Boise State Marshall.
Friday night.
Oh.
I know fans hate Friday night games sometimes, but those get viewers.
Yeah.
Friday night against Air Force.
At the very least, Boise State's getting more money out of this thing.
They get more money, and as I'm saying, the risk is more as you progress, because if the ratings aren't there for FS1, then it's like, oh, maybe they didn't make the right choice necessarily. But if it plays itself out in terms of getting a new conference or something like that.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to add to this before we wrap up this show, and that's just that, Fox Sports already has talked about bringing their version of College Game Day to Boise.
Big Nude Saturday.
You look at they have to rename that show.
Yeah. Because
I don't want all week for us to have to explain that Big Noon Kickoff starts at 10 a.m.
Big Noon Eastern kickoff.
Right.
Yeah.
But I will say this though, Boise State's probably they wrap up this season ranked 23rd in the AP poll. Probably going to be ranked somewhere similar in the preseason poll next year. Is Florida State going to be ranked next year, preseason? No. So you have a Boise State team ranked low 20s, high 20s, I guess I would say, mid 20s. I don't know.
Say mid
20s. Florida State unranked. Do you think there's any way on earth College Game Day would ever consider that game to cover?
No.
That time of year? No. So one thing I will say is it does show that there is a bit of an eagerness of Fox to build this relationship.
That is correct.
And they are willing to, do things that maybe ESPN wasn't willing to do. And so on that note, like I said, maybe that is a good base. Like maybe I feel like it is a good sign.
And that's what I mean about in the short term, that it seems like it's a good move.
Yeah.
Who knows how it pays off? But I think in the immediate, it does make sense.
Yeah. Well, either way, Channel 7's still going to be on Channel 7. We're still going to do the pregame shows.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, The Athletic, still everything there. You might just have to change your channels to a different one to watch Boise State football games.
Is it true you guys are doing a spinoff of over at The Athletic called The Unathletic, and it's just like videos of our softball team playing?
Yeah. By the way, registration coming up.
hope it's a reminder to everybody to make sure they're making the most of their off seasons.
Yeah.
I sat and watched Netflix for like 4 hours the other day to make sure that I wouldn't hurt myself.
Oh, good.
Yeah, just watch on the couch.
That's the latest in like sports, in sports like nutrition and sports therapy.
Getting a proper amounts of sleep, rest.
I mean, like Tom Brady sells like sleep shirts.
I might hit 700 home runs next year.
You might. No more stealing. Did you know that?
I'm okay with that. I don't know if I ever even tried to steal the base. I mean, I loved when I was a kid stealing base with Ricky Henderson. Man, a hero. Stealing in softball.
No more.
Let's just chill, everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's calm it on down. But
and for you people, just chill.
Yeah. What do you got? Anything that you want to say this week?
Just been covering all the coaching stuff. Next week, I'm going to take a look at kind of a very early look at the possible depth charts.
Love it.
For Boise State for what's coming back.
Yeah. We're only a couple weeks out of signing day. By the way,
signing day coming up. Probably got stuff on that. I'm going to be out of town the week after. Going on a little vacation, but I'll surely have stuff on recruiting too, and try to catch up with some of these guys that have gone pro.
Yeah.
Running backs coach. I mean, there's still a lot that's going to be coming up soon.
And then that probably gets us to the combine, NFL combine, and then
spring ball.
So, yeah, and we got some basket hoops in between. We had Leon Rice getting ejected out of last night's game. Boise State, tough loss on the road. I don't know, for whatever reason, Air Force is always just a difficult place to play, and I guess it really doesn't matter what the heck the sport is. But we'll see if they can get it back in the right direction. Back at home, a blue out, some type of color out, hosting Utah State this Saturday.
Wear a color,
and you'll probably be okay. But yeah, Dave, it's been fun. We appreciate it.
Buddy.
That'll do it for us in this edition of Jay and Dave Sports Bar, serving the Idaho sports community.